In the Championship, Hull watertight, Sunderland leaking. Burnley haven't conceded in a month of Sundays, Wednesday their latest victim. In the Beds Hearts derby, Watford showed heart, but Luton to bed, and Middlesbrough is now spelled with 5 straight L's. In League One, only Wrexham won in the top 6. Charlton and Bolton put the pressure on, but Posh and Burton, big winners at the bottom, as well as Cambridge United. Harris the boss, Bonner the doff, off and running with a win. League 2 saw an unusual amount of the status quo. 7 of the top 8 winning, Swindon are rocking all over the world, and Grimsby ate the cod army with chips. All that and more on Not the Top 20 podcast. I'm Ali Maxwell. He's George Elek. You all right?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Excited for tonight? Feels like deja vu from last week's pods. We got Sheffield United Leeds. Last Monday night we had Leeds Sunderland. That was a hell of a game. Tonight should be, I think it'll look and feel different, George. But again, get to this stage of the season and these are the games that really capture the imagination.
For sure. I enjoyed last Monday night as a neutral as much as I've enjoyed a game for a long time. So hopefully we get something similar tonight. Obviously, that was very competitive. You say it looked very different. I think it depends. Why are you laughing so much?
I'm laughing because 3 weeks ago you told me that Plymouth Argyle beating Liverpool was the most you'd ever enjoyed watching a football match, and you've just told me
crucially,
Leeds Sunderland is the game you've enjoyed the most for a long time.
You've misunderstood neutral there.
Brilliant.
I was not a neutral for Argyle against Liverpool. I was supporting the EFL underdog team. I was fully supporting one of the sides. Whereas last weekend,
but sorry, those are the words you used. So you've just confused yourself.
Did I say neutral
there
at the time?
Yeah,
Maybe.
you did. Yeah.
Well, that last weekend was the Championship game that I've enjoyed the most as the neutral for a long time. Maybe even league game. So hopefully more of the same tonight. Yeah, it was really good. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how tonight goes because obviously the way that the game went in the Sunderland match was very much determined by the first goal. And I do kind of wonder if Chris Wilder may have watched Sunderland employ a very effective low block and thought to himself, maybe we should do that. Having themselves come up against the Sunderland side of the stadium would like do something very similar to them. So it'll be interesting to see the way that Wilder approaches this game. But my hunch, and anyone who listens to the betting show will know that I'm a little bit concerned about their recent performance levels, and I'd be surprised if Leeds don't come away with all 3 points.
Well, one of the other two put the pressure on this weekend. Burnley beating Sheffield Wednesday 4-0 on Friday night, George. How did that game play out?
There are loads of ways that you can look at this, I think, because there is no denying that at 0-0, Sheffield Wednesday were the better team. They were the better team at 0-0. They created the better chances, and it was only due to shots going just wide, such as a Hickways that kind of clipped the post as it went wide, a bit of a kind of pot shot from a kind of a dangling leg, I guess, from a second phase of a set piece, through to Stuart Armstrong, who managed to kind of guide the ball just past the post when realistically he should have been doing a lot better. And yeah, there are loads of reasons to think that Burnley's goal either is being kept by one of the best goalkeepers in the country or is just leading quite a blessed life where their players are missing opportunities to hit the target when they should do better. And there's no way that on the basis, on the balance of play, this game should have finished 4-0. No chance. But I kind of look at it from a slightly more positive perspective for Burnley and think the kind of analysis of, you look at the XG and you look at the way the chances for that 0-0 and coming up with this was a very lucky result or anything like that, but Burnley is a little bit basic, because actually what I saw here was Burnley scoring 4 really good free-flowing attacks and creating decent opportunities in open play, which is what they've really been lacking over the last 4 or 5 months, and is the reason why they are currently third and chasing down Leeds and Sheffield United, and why with their incredible goals conceded record and clean sheet record, with their any kind of functioning attacking force, they should be in the top 2. I saw Marcus Edwards showing that he is quite clearly a cut above the level fairly consistently, where Burnley were not very good as an attacking force in the first half. He was still able to show his individual quality to go close early on with a kind of deflected cross. But then for the goal itself, it was his ball carrying that got them up the pitch. It was his clever movement and run, and then his very, very quick feet and finish that created the first goal. In the second half, Sheffield Wednesday are a good side who generally are competitive in any game in this league. However, 3 times they managed to breach them effectively. Like, yes, the finishing at the end of the day is what meant that Burnley won this game, and there's no way it should have finished 4-0. But there are enough signs. We've had a whole season up to this game on Friday night, to show us that Burnley are a seriously good defensive side. And even if things do regress back to the mean a little bit and they concede a fair few goals between now and the end of the season, I think it would be a pretty big shock if they suddenly turn into a really bad defensive side. And therefore, the main signpost for me here is this is a Burnley team who, maybe through change of personnel, such as someone like Edwards, who's impressed the Champions League level recently, or due to a change in mentality, where we saw Parker make some pretty attacking changes when they were 1-0 up in the game. If Burnley's attacking output is to improve, then that is the more notable thing in my mind than teams missing chances against them.
Yeah, I note that if you look at FB refs match logs sort by Burnley's expected goals number generated in individual matches, that was their 5th highest number of the season. But also the game against Oxford the other day, the game against Hull the other day, those are also in the top 8 of Burnley's individual match XG generated this season, which, as you say, kind of suggests that something is improving on that front. I wonder if that something might be to do with Marcus Edwards to an extent, and not just the individual skill which he has shown, and in particular showed for a magnificent opening goal where he combined with Cullen, who found him out wide, kept running forward. Edwards flicked it into Cullen, who then played it back into the path of Edwards to finish absolutely brilliantly. But also, sometimes the benefit of a player like Edwards is as much what they do for their teammates because of the attention being placed on them as it is what they are doing individually with the ball at their feet. And I think when you see the game that Jadon Anthony had, and understanding that Anthony has had an excellent season for Burnley, he's probably been their most consistent attacking player. But I think he's the sort of guy that maybe shouldn't be the like primary ball player, the primary X factor for a team trying to win promotion from the Championship. But as a really clever footballer who's good off both feet, who can play off both wings, I think if you have someone like Edwards to provide the sparkle, then Anthony's probably his performance levels are raised somewhat by not being the number one option and being closed down quite as much. So it was notable how they took their chances versus the way that Wednesday completely botched the ones that they created in the first half and 1 or 2 in the second as well. And then we saw the dribbly Belgian, Manuel Benson, come and put the cherry on the top of the icing of the cake, didn't we? But a bit confusing, George, watching Benson cut in from the left-hand side, smash it into the top corner with his right foot. A bit like watching a right-handed golfer, try and play left-handed for a challenge. We basically haven't seen him for 18 months, and then this happens. Like when they used to put YouTube compilations in mirror images to try and get past broadcasting rights. Very strange, but great to see him back. And just to pick up on something you said about Trafford, you said maybe they've got one of the best goalkeepers in the country at the moment. Well, some stats for that as well. Burnley have conceded 2.8% of the shots they have faced this season. I've never seen anything quite like that. But it's not just shots total. What about the shots that are on target? Well, I use StatHead, which is FB Ref's kind of paywalled database of joy and fun. And I looked at every single goalkeeper in the FB Ref database this season. That is dozens and dozens of leagues from across the world. And I filtered it by goalkeepers that have played over 20 games this season and who have made more than 40 saves, just to try and cut out some small sample size stuff. Only 12 keepers in the entire FB Ref database have fit those criteria, have a save percentage of over 80%, so saving better than 4 in every 5 shots on target, not just shots. And Trafford is at the top by a significant margin with an 87.8% save percentage. The next best is 84%, so he's almost 4% better than the second best shot-stopping goalkeeper in the whole world relative to the level they're playing at. Interestingly, Kasper Schmeichel is in third, the Celtic goalkeeper, which just makes their dominance in that level even more ridiculous when you've got a keeper who never lets anything in. You've got Jan Oblak on the list as well in 6th, which is no great surprise. And actually, Michael Cooper of Sheffield United is in 11th. And there's a couple of Championship goalkeepers performing exceptionally well per the numbers this season. Not just those two, but obviously Johansson in goal for Stoke coming in goal for Oxford as well. So there's an extent to which I struggle each week to find new things to say about this Burnley side, but I think basically highlighting the absolutely unbelievable and possibly almost world-class goalkeeping ability of James Trafford right now is quite remarkable, and I cannot wait to see where the next few years of his career takes him. We also had Sunderland dropping more points at home, not even drawing this time as they had done recently against Argyle and Watford. They lost at home to Hull, George. They are dropping too many points right now. It's now an 8-point gap to second, which clearly could be more tonight, depending on the result between Sheffield United and Leeds. And it's another scalp away from home for Hull under Ruben Sayes.
I was fairly convinced a couple of weeks ago that Sunderland were being... So I think a few people were very... underrated, especially by the betting markets, when it came down to this battle for second place, as it is in my mind, although that might change tonight if the game goes the way that I don't think it will. But as you say, too many drop points recently, especially in home games where they should really be winning, and at the start of the season Sunderland were so dominant in these games at home. It was only away from home to the likes of Argyle and Watford. It's interesting that the only two teams that Sunderland lost to in the whole league dating up to November the 26th were Plymouth Argyle and Watford, both away from home. And then the two teams that they've struggled to beat at home that have triggered this kind of crisis of confidence are Argyle and Watford. It's a strange kind of flip where, for whatever it is, two teams where, obviously Watford's league position is relatively impressive, but certainly the time of playing them, you wouldn't have anticipated them to struggle as they have done. This was a game that was decided by a bit of a freak goal. To kind of add insult to injury, it was Joe Gelhardt who was on the corner for Hull, whose delivery from corners, especially given he was seemingly shooting after this one, was superb. Where the corners whipped in, and Patrick Roberts at the near post definitely plays a massive part in this. Like, I had to watch that 3 times before realising that he didn't actually get a touch, but Patterson's behind him to try and gather the ball and kind of tries to catch it off the back of Roberts' head. There's no contact made, and he kind of fluffs it into the goal. Like, I do think, even though Patterson should do better, I was far more sympathetic with him than maybe the commentary on Sky was in the early kickoff, where I do think it's a pretty hard one. Maybe where he was naive was that he didn't parry it or punch it rather than try and catch it, given the kind of crowded area under which he was trying to gather. But given that fingers were being pointed at him after the Leeds game, the goal they conceded, and it was a pretty torrid game from him generally, where he had to make a couple of very weird saves. Another from I think this time a shot from Gelhardt from a corner, another from a deflected cross that nearly looped over his head, and both of which he dealt with, albeit not particularly convincingly. But yeah, for Hull, they did pretty well within the game. There was a relatively fortunate goal that got them ahead. I thought the fact that it was Carl Joseph doing some really good pressing, or basically chasing down a lost cause and forcing 09 into the error that led to the corner significant, because Carl Joseph does that. He's basically a Labrador. He will just run around the pitch and chase any lost cause wherever, and that can be significant at times, as it proved to be here. And Sunderland, in terms of goal scoring opportunities, missed a couple of really decent chances. Isidore clearly with the header should have done much better at the far post, just heading it just wide of the post. Ionder with a decent shot that he just dragged wide. It's a performance.
Weird handball from Coyle that wasn't spotted by the ref, but which upon multiple replays looked pretty blatantly an arm stuck out and hitting his hand, where stopping the ball's trajectory. I thought
one that probably would have been given by VAR, but that's good that it wasn't. So
yeah, I felt Hull's performance was like clear parallels to that Sheffield United game, which they won on the Friday night a few weeks ago, where they defended their box pretty well. They did get a fair amount of luck in terms of Sunderland's poor finishing and, of course, the goal that they scored. But even with that, they always seem like they are a threat on the break when they get a chance to counter. And I'm really impressed with the way that they counter-attack, the way they build those attacks, the movement that they have off the ball, and the pace to commit bodies forward. And part of me wants to go big, because this is a Hull side under a flavour of the month, Ruben Sayes, who have beaten Sheffield United away, beaten Sunderland away, drew with Leeds, of course, as well under Sayes. But they haven't won in 5 games at home, Hull. They're not doing brilliantly against mid-table and bottom half opponents. There's still a lot of work for them to do. This put them 3 points clear of the relegation zone. But they haven't done enough to be comfortable. And I think it's tempting to only focus on their headline wins, and rather than kind of analyse the body of work overall. that, 4 of their next 6 are against bottom 7 teams. That's Cardiff, Argyle, Oxford and Luton. 3 of them are at home. Huge opportunity for Hull to be feeling pretty comfy in 6 games' time with maybe 6 or 8 games still to play. But they have to actually do the work at home. They have to get the results at home, and they can't just rely on these admittedly very impressive results that they're getting against teams who they can counterattack on pretty quickly.
What I would say is I definitely agree that the issue is, and I was thinking about this because I do a BBC Oxford pod called The Dub, and we talked about it this morning. With this relegation battle and Hull kind of fall right into this, where they are, normally there's like an idea that kind of 50 points or so is what's needed to stay up. And I've been saying for quite a long time that I reckon it won't be anywhere near that. The longer time goes on, I'm starting to wonder actually what the number is. Like, given how poor Luton are and how much Argyle are struggling to pick up points consistently, and Derby, and we are now in let's get to the end of February, and they are on 28, 29, 30 points with 12 games left. Could 40 be enough? Which would be, I don't really see why one of those teams, in order to make 42 go down, have to pick up a point a game for the rest from here to the rest of the season. And right now they're doing nowhere near that. So for teams like Oxford, Stoke, Hull, where the assumption is, you still probably need 10, maybe 12, there's a chance you need 5, because the quality is so poor. Normally we see teams rally at the bottom. Hull are the only team, and as you say, they hadn't won 5 at home before this, but at least they're the one team who are kind of competing in games against better teams. You look at, as we'll talk about in a second, Oxford, Luton, these are teams that just, when they come up against teams towards the top end of the table, just get routinely rolled over.
How that could be just as well for Oxford United of Oxfordshire, who are finding it very difficult to win any points at the moment, and went down 2-0 at the Hawthorns. George, did you get a nosebleed on account of all that altitude? Did you feel it?
Yes.
Was the air thinner?
That's what it was. That's what it was. I thought it was my chicken tikka from the Vine before. What was great about my day at the Hawthorns was that we got the tram from New Street and met an American guy called Ben, who we got talking to on the walk from the tram station to the Vine. And we asked him why he was a West Brom fan. The reason he's a West Brom fan is purely because he went to the same college as Daryl DK and don't even know each other, had never met. But for that very reason, he's a West Brom fan who then flew over for a week with his wife in Europe. And they landed on the Friday, and he left her in the hotel just to do a day trip to the Hawthorns and back on his own. And also, when we got to the Vine, because it was so full, they said, home fans only. And he said, lads, come with me, stand behind me, showed them his West Brom shirt, and we just walked in behind him. Perfect.
What was he not watching when Daryl was playing the best football of his life for Val Ishmael's Barnsley, playing launch and squish? He could be supporting League One's 10th best team right now. Instead, he's in the Championship playoffs. He's dodged to put it there. George, your team got routinely disposed of by West Bromwich Albion. What impressed you most about the Baggies?
It's hard.
Or
it's hard. I feel like quite often you ask me this after an Oxford game, and I'm so there aggressively as a fan that I basically don't even register that there's an opposition team playing.
Yeah.
West Brom were totally and utterly dominant, just levels between the two teams. Again, on the Dub this morning, Jerome put it very well, where he was like, it's weird when you go to a game and a team are 1-0 up, but for some reason it just feels like they're 3-0 up. It just feels like that 1-goal lead is totally insurmountable. I went for a pee at about 38 minutes and I came out and I was like, do I go and sit and watch us not score for 6 minutes, or do I get a head start in the beer queue? And I reckon in my life, 99 times out of 100, I go and sit down on my seat and then I go back in again. And this time I just stood and nothing happened. I didn't miss anything.
What beers are they serving in the away end of the Hawthorns?
I had a Worthingtons, but it's also Madry, Carling, and Carling cider.
El Alma de Madrid, lovely. That's really nice.
Yeah,
delicious Spanish lager. Yeah,
brewed on the River Trent, they were just very good. Alex Mowat scored, which was in the midst of a spell of pressure that continued after the goal. He gave it the big one to us, which I did see why he did that. He had quite a good loan spell with us, I thought. They just continued to dominate possession, to dominate territory. Every time Oxford had any kind of semblance of any attacking threat, we'd get excited for a second and then realise that, yes, Shemi Plata might be on the ball in some space, but he's actually 55 yards from goal, and it's quite hard to do anything with that. Ola Romney looked really lively, leading the line for Oxford, a pretty thankless task in terms of goal scoring threat, but linking play really, really well, good hold-up play. I think he's going to be quite good, which is a surprise because I watched some clips of him when he first joined and I was not impressed. But he's looking like an interesting prospect for sure. For Baggies, I think this is the exact performance and result that they needed after a pretty disappointing midweek home draw and performance. It was just a game against a side really struggling for confidence and any kind of form where they were able to flex their muscles a bit. The second goal was because Jamie Cumming came up for a corner and they broke quickly and were able to break up the other end and tuck one away with basically the last kick of the game. So a pretty dominant win for Baggies, and I had a lovely day out, albeit at no point did I ever think Oxford were going to basically have a chance, let alone score a goal.
Swansea beat Blackburn 3-0. Blackburn, the other side in the top six, not discussed so far, and losing at Swans in the managerless derby. We had Alan Sheehan in the dugout for Swansea following Luke Williams' sacking last Monday. David Lowe continuing in the Blackburn dugout, having done well in his first couple of games as caretaker, but not here. They had early chances, Vyman drawing 2 good saves out of Lawrence Vigouroux, and then Vipotnik, just about squirmed one in from a set piece, having essentially missed or air kicked his first effort and then fallen over and then sort of stabbed the ball goalward straight at Ainsley Pears, and it somehow went under Pears. A really poor goalkeeping, quite frankly. And often, particularly as Blackburn had started the better and the opening goal was slightly against the run of play, I often think, George, a classic championship game between teams that are fairly well matched is whoever goes ahead then sits back, the opposition put all the pressure on, they equalise, it finishes 1-1. The opposite happened, really. As soon as Swansea scored, they just massively grew in confidence and Blackburn shrunk completely. Swansea had the next 10 shots after going 1-0 up, and by the end of that barrage, they were 3-0 up. Lovely take from Pert Harris on the break, and then Liam Cullen scoring the most Liam Cullen goal imaginable. First touch finish from a cutback into the corner. And a team that had got 4 points from their previous 9 games, with the relegation zone just growing nearer and nearer, a lot of pressure building on everyone at the club. Eventually, Luke Williams gets the old tin tack, and Alan Sheehan, who's not hugely popular at the club, to be honest, given he was appointed by Paul Watson, the former sporting director, who's now gone, had Luton ties with him. So the fan base a bit like, why is Sheehan still here? He's part of a bad former regime. But he gets a win here, and they're looking for a new manager. Blackburn are looking for a new manager. We didn't get to give any thoughts on the Williams sacking because it happened just as we finished recording, George. But Swansea have sacked Luke Williams. They hired him from Notts County in League Two. He definitely purported to play the Swansea way, but it hasn't worked out. And I wonder if you can get your head around that and give me some thoughts on what's next for Swans.
I'm wondering what's going to happen with the Swansea way thing from here, because Luke Williams came in last season and very much didn't play the Swansea way, but got the results with the necessary to ensure that the poor start under Mike Duff, where he tried and failed to play the Swansea way. And then this season, we've seen a kind of reversion back to Williams playing the way he wants to. But a lot of the criticism from Swansea fans has been around the style of play. And I understand there is, passing-based possession, attacking football is way too broad a term just to capture all means of possession-based football. But there has to come a point, surely, West, where this circle of doom is broken, where now you see Sheehan come in on the weekend. Swansea, game state plays a big part, but by no means dominate the ball. They win the game 3-0. There has to come a point where this idea that a team has to play a certain way in order to appease a fan base, where pretty consistently the cycle is that means of playing football, even under Russell Martin, where he did pretty well, but it still didn't yield any kind of results that got them back towards the Premier League. It's going to be interesting to see who they appoint this time around. I've seen that Sheehan is the odds-on favourite. My assumption is that's probably a relatively lazy knee-jerk reaction to one good result. As you say, he's very much the former man's man, and with a new man looking to pick a new man, then maybe it'll be a different man. But it'll be not called Sheehan. But it'll be interesting to see what the route that they go down, because it just seems like real ideology at play now with Swansea. And especially, there was a time when they came down from the Premier League But budget-wise, they're one of the big fish in the league, and that just absolutely isn't the case now. They can't go out and recruit players who are going to have the best technical ability. And now, as you mentioned the other day, that in Matt Grimes, they've lost the player that was the poster boy for that style of play under various different managers, who was the metronome that enabled them to dominate the ball. Probably no one better in the Championship who's been a mainstay at being someone who can dictate the tempo and basically take a game and ensure that you're the team who are dominating possession and in control of the possession. He's now gone too. So, Williams, I think, will have a job at probably League One level relatively soon, but he'll probably do a very good job. I thought he's clearly got something about him as a coach, and he's able to get the best technical players in the division as he had at Notts County. I'm sure it'll work again. But that is kind of what you need in order to make his style of play work. And if he goes out and takes a job with a club with a mid-table budget again, he'll probably struggle again.
Yeah, I saw some Swans fans who have a Swansea podcast even discussing within themselves that they don't feel like it's very clear the definition of the Swansea way. And I think that is just quite dangerous, isn't it? I also think it's worth pointing out that the Swansea way, as I understand it, to have been the way that they played in particular under Roberto Martinez and Brendan Rodgers, football is so different now to then. Specifically and tactically, football is very different in terms of how teams cope with playing against teams that keep the ball and play a lot of short passes in front of them, where I think the out of possession level of teams and teams' understanding of how to play out of possession against possession-based teams, for example, has come on so far in that time that it's not just a case of how many passes you play or what your percentage number is. It's basically, opposition teams are now so happy defending compact inside their own defensive third. And if you are only going to play one kind of way like that, you're just going to make it harder for yourself, because it's easier to play against teams like that. And not only is it easier to defend against teams who are going to play like that and aren't going to offer you a huge amount of threat in terms of direct play or counter-attacking play or set-piece threat because they've got a load of small technical types, you can plan for it. And it's not just the case of keeping the opposition at bay, but also transition attacks now being incredibly dangerous and teams understanding, again, like Hull City, for example, when they're in full flow, exactly how to put together dangerous transition attacks against teams who have committed too many bodies forward. So for me, the Swansea way, I mean, we're the ones talking about it, and I doubt within the club they're thinking about it that much. They're probably just looking for someone that's a good fit. What I would say is just ignore possession, ignore short passes. You just need to be able to attack well and be a team that takes a lot of shots and scores a lot of goals. That can look any which way. And at the moment, Swansea, being a really high possession team under Williams, under Martin, weren't very good attacking teams. And they weren't that under Duff either. So they have to ignore that completely and try and work out how to just be better in attack. That will also lead to them being more exciting to watch. That will appease the fans.
With the Duff appointment, should, you would think, be a warning sign or a warning flag at least to Richard Montague when making this decision, right? Because they brought in a manager whose whole managerial success up to that point had been creating two really good attacking sides in Barnsley and in Cheltenham, but not playing in any way possession-based football. They were really, he got the best out of strikers. It was relatively direct, but his team scored a lot of goals. And yet they brought him in and he felt like, or he was told to, or for whatever reason, had to change the style of play in order to appease the fan base. And they went absolutely terribly. So you've got to be a bit careful. Like, you can't, that was 18 months, no, it was 12 months ago, 13 months ago, 40 months ago. So if they go out and hire someone who has no aspirations or no track record of playing that way, there's absolutely no reason why the same cultural issues won't crop up again. And then we'll have the same situation. We've either got a manager trying to bend over backwards to change what he's done to be successful in the past, or we'll have a fan base saying, sorry, this guy isn't us, so why is he here?
Swansea are now 10 points clear of it with 12 games to go. George, tell me about Coventry 2, Preston 1, 7 wins out of 8, I think it is now for Cov, and the bookies have seen enough to price up Coventry as being considered the most likely top 6 finishers out of the group from West Brom in 5th downwards.
Yeah, and understandably so, given their recent run of form. And we'll kind of talk about the way they're doing that in just a second. This was totally deserved. 2 goals in quick succession midway through the first half. Jack Redoney with the first after a good ball in from Mason Clark. And then Bobby Thomas continuing his ridiculous scoring spree at the moment, heading in the corner scrappily after a good delivery from Matt Grimes. And I think Grimes' set-piece delivery, on top of, as we just discussed, it's very good open play, ball retention and passing is going to be a big strength of theirs. Preston came back into it, Will Keane scoring relatively late on, and had another couple of opportunities late to get a point, which wouldn't have really been deserved. Coventry the better side here and fully deserving of their win.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that with Jack Redoney, you have a player scoring that lovely headed goal that he really made a name for himself scoring at Wimbledon. I went back and watched our 21 under 21 clip of Redoney recently, and it's funny how many different roles he's actually played since then. Huddersfield, he didn't necessarily play a similar role that he did with Wimbledon, partly because Huddersfield were pretty up against it in the 2 seasons he was there. Coventry, he's played a few different positions already. He's currently playing in basically a number 10 role, and Lampard is getting so much out of him. He has scored 11 headers in his career, which is 1 more than he has scored with his favoured left foot, 5 more than he's scored with his right foot. And I love a player like Redoney in a position that he plays, being really good at scoring headed goals. It feels so rare that someone who also takes a lot of set pieces and has an incredible amount of assists this season is also a great aerial goal threat. I absolutely love that. In fact, because of Coventry's good form, we're going to hit the big green button marked FOTMob Corner. FOTMob are our sponsors. It's the number 1 scores app. Scores on match days, stats for days, every day is a slogan that I think they should consider using, because it's not just for match days. It's also just packed with so much juicy goodness for teams, players, divisions, stat leaders from across the whole world. So you can download FOTMob app using the link in the show notes. We're going to use it to take a quick look at Coventry City, the top line stuff. Since Lampard was appointed, Coventry have taken the 4th most points in the league. They were 17th when he was appointed, 2 points above the relegation zone. They are now 7th, 1 point off the playoffs. Coventry under Lampard versus Coventry under Mark Robins. 1.07 points per game under Robins this season became 1.94 points per game so far under Lampard. And I've spent hours this weekend poring over FOTMob data, going through all the games and digging beneath the points total, the wins, the goals scored and conceded. And what I've discovered is that the underlying numbers are very, very similar between Coventry under Robins this season, Coventry under Lampard this season. This has not been an absolute revolution. He hasn't ripped it all up and started again, but there have been some tweaks. So under Lampard, Coventry takes slightly fewer shots, but they take slightly higher quality shots on average. They face slightly more shots than they did under Robins, but the shots that they face are slightly lower quality shots. So in the aggregate, pretty similar XG and XG against numbers, but the way that they get there is slightly different. I would say Coventry under Lampard are a touch more pragmatic, and I think it's made them a team better at just getting things done and winning matches. They get the ball forward a little bit quicker. They don't put as much pressure on the goalkeeper and the centre-backs doing short build-up from their own box. They play fewer short passes from goal kicks. Their defensive line out of possession is a little deeper than it was under Robins. And again, I think this is designed to put less pressure on the centre-backs. They were struggling. They were making individual errors. Coventry were getting caught out on the break too often. And now Lampard is protecting those players a little bit more by slightly changing what he's asking them to do. And I think that's pragmatic management to get the best out of the team in the short term. The attackers have a bit more license to attack quicker, I think. A little bit less focus on possession in itself. They're more instinctive, I think, under Lampard. Rather than slower, more patterned build-up. I think they are more instinctive, and I think it, again, suits the attackers that they have. Sims wants to be spinning into the channels and getting on long passes into the channels, latching onto them, holding the ball up, laying it off, and suddenly Coventry are in the final third. Mason Clark and Sakamoto, they want to be playing off the cuff as well. And Redoney is just contributing in so many different ways. They're a bit better out of possession as well. I think that they're a bit sharper on the details in pressing. Again, data-wise, doesn't suggest that they're pressing a lot more or a lot less than under Robins. Just a bit better, I think, overall. And that's a feature of Coventry under Lampard. Just executing better in pretty much every facet than they were at the start of the season. And just on a really basic level, I know that this is always quite a boring thing to bring up, but I think it is absolutely key to the change in results for Coventry under Lampard. Chance conversion, shot conversion. It's not sexy, but God, it's important. So under Mark Robins this season, Coventry scored 9% of their shots, and under Lampard, it's 11%. That's a small improvement, but a notable one. Under Robins, they were conceding 12% of their shots. Under Lampard, they're conceding 8.3% of their shots. That is a more significant change. And if you add those two together, they're converting their chances at a greater lick. They're conceding the opposition chances at a better rate for them. And that is absolutely crucial for how they've turned what was a massively underperforming team that was playing all right in certain aspects, but lacking in both boxes, to now a team that's winning the battle in both boxes and getting so much more out of the squad that Lampard has at his disposal. And there's one proper quirk that you wanted to flag up as well. Yeah?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Headers.
I mean, headers full stop. They've scored the most headed goals in the league this season with 15, which is a miles clear of anyone else. And it's kind of been a part of their play all season. However, it's become way more pronounced and obvious since Frank Lampard came in, where if you take their last 5 games in all competitions, they've scored 6 goals. That's including the 4-1 defeat at home to Ipswich in the FA Cup. And 5 of those 6 goals have been headers. So 5 of the last 6 goals have been scored heading the ball in the back of the net. When you look at their top goal scorers so far this season, Haji Wright on 7 goals, who's been out injured since, November. Ellis Sims, 6 goals. The centre-back Bobby Thomas on 4 goals, alongside Thomas Asante, Ephraim Mason-Clark, Jack Rodoni and Victor Tor. Now let's take like a handful of those. Firstly, Haji Wright, he's had 8 headed shots so far this season. An expected goals of 1.85, only scoring 1 of those. That is no surprise. He should score way more headers. We've often seen him playing off the left, being that aerial threat at the back post. And I've got no doubt that when he comes back consistently, when he's back to full fitness and starting games for this Coventry side, he is going to enjoy himself, because the way they attack and the crosses they get in the box are going to suit him down to a T. Ellis Sims is obviously the main aerial goal threat. He has scored 4 goals from 16 headed shots, 2.19 XG. He should have scored 5. Meslier pulled off one of the saves of the season in the 2-0 defeat at Leeds just the other day, headed down right into the corner, and I have no idea how Meslier kept it out. That would have been 5. He is consistently from open play that focal point that you can aim at for crosses from deep, crosses from wide. And he is very good at winning balls in the air, but also, as you can see, despite massively underperforming his XG over the course of the season, from headed goals, he's massively overperforming, which doesn't say too much about his finishing with his feet, I wouldn't say. Bobby Thomas has had a staggering 21 headed shots already this season, which is mad for a centre-back. 2.82 expected goals, 4 scored, so again, overperforming, just someone who, again, is very good from set pieces, getting first contact and getting good shots off. And as you mentioned, Rodoni, who is, maybe one of these surprising ones, who scored 3 headed goals from 16 headed shots at 2.26 XG. And then even, I wanted to point this out too, in Sakamoto, you've got a wide player who is tiny. He's in terms of stature, he's very small. He's got no right to really be someone who is getting headed shots off, but he scored 1 goal with his head so far this season from 6 shots. But if you look at the shot locations of those, it's basically one circle really close to the back post, where obviously he's making those runs and getting onto the edge, and that is what makes them so dangerous. And Mason Clark on the other side has also scored 1 headed goal from a similar group. When you look at their key creators in terms of assists this season, Jack Rodoni has 10 assists from an expected assists of 6.8. So again, he's someone whose crossing ability as well as his heading ability is so important. Mason Clark, 5 assists. Sakamoto with 3 assists. So basically got players who take up wide positions, who are creating the most chances. And expected assists per 90, Mason Clark with 0.4, Rodoni with 0.22, Sakamoto with 0.18, and then Tor 0.18 as well. He's been taking their set pieces. Grimes, who now will do, 0.14. So what you've got here is a team full of players with really good delivery from set piece situations and from open play. And dominant aerial strikers in Sims, right, if he fits into that, but also wide players in Sakamoto and Mason Clark, who may not fit that kind of idea of being good headers of the ball, but are happy to get into the positions to do so and use their head in order to get shots off, coupled with Radoni, who's got that kind of box-crashing heading ability. So they're nailing it now. Like, I don't know how, I can't work out if this is sustainable or a weird quirk, but at the moment, we're playing them on Saturday, and I'm really hoping we start Elliot Moore alongside Michal Helik, Kieran Brown at left back, so that we've just got as many headers of the ball as possible, because it seems like that is their best form of attack.
Heading into the playoffs, I think so. That's FOTMob Corner. That's Coventry City. Download FOTMob. It is great. Do so using the link in the description. Friday night saw Bristol City beat Borough 2-1. 5 defeats in a row now for Middlesbrough, and not a great reaction to the vote of confidence that it appeared Steve Gibson gave Michael Carrick this time last week. The best moment for them came when Tommy Conway scored against his old club. The good thing for Bristol City fans, having watched their former beloved home club hero do that to them and put Borough ahead, is that George Elek, the West Ham loanee, scored twice to win it for them. And then he did the fingers in the ears as well, as if to say, take that, Conway. All good stuff, I think we can all agree. Earthy's a pretty quick double to turn this game around. And I was really struck by the fact that it just wasn't that hard for them to do. And I don't think that reflects very well on Middlesbrough. They at 2-1 down, they really went down without as much of a whimper, barely had a shot after that. And it's pretty bleak, and the performances are really poor. And in particular, I just look at the front four that Carrick is selecting right now, and all of a sudden it's gone from looking really dynamic and creative with a nice blend of speed, skill, industry. And now, because of Doak's injury, Azaz being dropped through poor form and Latalath being sold, it's Bergzog on the left, Whittaker on the right, Iheanacho and Conway, who are just both strikers. You can say one of them's playing as a 10, but neither of them suit that role. And it just looks so bad. It looks bad out of possession, because with those players in your front line, none of whom are known for a lot of industry out of the ball, without the ball, maybe Conway at a push, you're never going to have serious pressure on the ball, which meant Bristol City could just build up into Borough's final third as easily as they wanted to. And then it's on the defence to be put under pressure and to stand up to that. And Borough's defence hasn't been good for years. They haven't been good at standing up to pressure for years. But at the very least, they were able to meet fire with fire and be good enough on the attacking end and at least disrupt the opposition and just about enough in build-up to mean that they didn't face that many shots, so they didn't actually get tested that often. Now they're being tested all the time because they can't stop the opposition getting into their final third, and that's what we're seeing. Then in attack, again, they look completely out of ideas. It's no real surprise. It's a group of players that have never played together before, essentially playing 4-4-2 with two strikers that don't link play as individuals, don't combine together, with two wingers in Whittaker and Bergzorg, who are both really individualistic, to be honest. It's no great surprise that they look out of ideas. And that's not to say it's an excuse for Carrick, albeit I think he was dealt a bit of a dud hand in January. Some of this is quite unfortunate, like the injury to Doak, the Latalath situation, which dragged on for the whole of the window. It's clearly nothing to do with him, really, but definitely impacts him. But I do just question taking Azaz out of the team. And I know Borough fans who have said, look, he's just been playing really badly since the start of the year. And I trust them. I think it's probably true that Azaz has been playing badly. But everyone's been playing pretty badly. And Azaz is the sort of player that looks bad in a team that is playing poorly and looks excellent in a team that's playing really, really well. But it's also just a profile thing. Like, you want to build a front line that complements each other. You need Azaz with the players that I've just talked about. You need him to knit it all together, because otherwise it's just individuals with big gaps between them trying to do individual stuff. I hoped that Whittaker moving to Borough would see him regain his confidence, and I hoped that they'd be able to get the ball to him a bit closer to goal than Argyle did. But he's had 8 touches inside the box in 262 minutes so far. He's not getting that close to the box at the moment, and it's a real issue. And as I say, part of the problem at the top of the pitch is that they don't give any protection for the defence. The midfield doesn't give that much protection for the defence either. and they've never been a strong defensive unit, and that is more glaringly obvious than ever before. So another disappointing night for Borough. For Bristol City, I just find it interesting that, it was great atmosphere. They turned it around. They won under the lights. They briefly went into the top 6 because it was on Friday night. And I just don't feel like anyone's that excited about Bristol City's playoff charge. Or, in fact, they're not calling it a playoff charge because I don't think they really believe in it. And I think they're quite an interesting case from a neutral's point of view. There's loads of factors that go into why the fans don't seem that excited, that engaged, that enamoured with things. I think there'd be lots of neutrals who'd look at Bristol City's situation and think, yeah, that's a pretty good, solid club doing fairly good, solid things, if not spectacular things. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe as it's the 10th season in the Championship, the highest they've finished is 8th and the lowest they've finished is 19th. Maybe it's just a bit of boredom and a bit of stasis. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of love for those who are running the club, whether it's the people literally owning the club or those making decisions on behalf of them. Manning himself, the manager, he doesn't have a personality that whips up a fan base, a personality that wins extra points on top of what the club is doing on the pitch. The football that they play is all right. It's not incredible. It's not that exciting. It's not unbelievably boring either. So again, they're just kind of in between there. I just find it an interesting situation. Like, I haven't got an issue with fans having high standards and wanting more or better. I do feel it's a bit sad that Bristol City are in a great position with 10, 12 games to go. And the general feeling I get is, nah, we're not good enough. We won't make it. We never quite make it. Because normally you have the opposite at this stage of the season. People getting quite excited. Do you reckon Watford fans are getting excited, George, after their 2-0 home win against rivals Luton?
Too right. I reckon Watford fans can't believe how easy they had it on Sunday afternoon. A derby game against a side who beat you 3-0 in the reverse, who are trying to battle out of a relegation spot, bottom of the league. And it was cosy. It was, and I mean cosy not just in the fact that it was easy, cosy in the fact that they were never really threatened. After Mads Andersen missed an opportunity after a couple of minutes, a penalty came off the back of that after Kapinski kind of rushed out and made the foul on Doumbia, put away by Deli Bashiru. Great work from Chapatadze to set up Kayembe for the second. And then the lack of quality from Luton was staggering. And I messaged you about this because I think if you speak to basically any fan of any team after their team has been beaten, they will normally bemoan misplaced passes and lack of quality on the ball. And I think it's one of those things where it basically happens in every game. Every team in every game will always misplace passes, and if you lose the game, it's something you look at as being like, that wasn't good enough. On this occasion, the care that Luton took of the ball from 2-0 down was like horrendous, where just either misplaced passes at times of like some semblance of threat, or just in moments of just trying to progress the ball up the pitch, just really bad, like individual mistakes leading to turnovers of possession. And frankly, Watford didn't do anything in the second half. They didn't have to do anything. That's no like slam. They didn't have to. It was so comfortable. And if I was a Luton fan, I'd look at that whole performance and think, like, this is a game at our rivals. We're trying to get into the playoffs. We're trying to be safe. We're 2-0 down. And we've kind of just rolled over and been like, fine. Like there's a lack of belief, of energy, and like part of me wonders, and this shouldn't be the case given that some of these players were brought in January, but like is so an element of these players are like, we're not going to be here next year. This is kind of done. It was the same at Sunderland, where again they just rolled over without any real fight. And for a club that has such an amazing spirit and the culture that was built there, it felt like such a massive reason why they were able to fight their way into the Premier League, and last season really fight when they were in the Premier League. It's bizarre to see them, especially under Rob Edwards initially, under Matt Bloomfield, who is a player we know embodied that kind of fighting spirit and was someone who would leave absolutely everything out there, and as a manager still carries that really emotional persona on the touchline. But this team just doesn't seem to reflect Edwards. It doesn't seem to reflect Bloomfield in terms of the application and the quality. And I just cannot see any way that they stay up from here unless things, I mean, they have to have some moment. And I wonder, like, had Jacob Brown's header gone in against Argard and they win the game 2-1, would that have given them that little spark and that belief they can kick on? But right now they are miles off it and have been the worst team in the league for a long time and continue to be in that conversation.
Yeah, Norwich beat Stoke 4-2. Really bright performance from Norwich. And we've said this before at home at Carrow Road this season, where they've now scored 4 goals or more 6 times at home this season, with the caveat that that's against all teams 11th and below, and that they don't have a great record against the teams above them. But they do put on a show for their fans regularly, the home fans anyway. Such positive forward passing here, such nice movement off the ball. Really like the movement of the fullbacks and the wingers. They seem to have a great understanding, each of them, of when to be narrow, when to go wide. They always seem to have passing options in the middle of the pitch to protect the middle of the pitch through the thirds. But then when that sucks the opposition narrow, the fullbacks will streak forward and get played in down the left or down the right. Now, Stoke are not great defensively, and I think their approach suits Norwich, because although they're not great defensively, they still try and be quite an ambitious out-of-possession team, which doesn't work for them very well. Too much space, and Norwich pretty much created chances for fun here. They have struggled a bit more against compact defences like Preston and Derby, and they have lots to improve on, but great fun for Norwich, even conceding the goals that they did, which were mostly their own doing, errors at the back, particularly from Duffy. They saw Sargent score 2 goals, great performances from the fullbacks, the youngsters Fisher, who was signed obviously from Bromley. What a bit of talent ID and recruitment that looks like. And a newish name, Lucian Mahovo, who they signed in the summer from Notts County, where he hadn't played any senior football really, and last season was on loan at Long Eaton United and Boston United in non-league. He's now starting games for Norwich, and he looks brilliant. Big, excellent technique, punches passes forward between the lines, gallops up and down the left side, and basically set up the final goal, the 4th goal, which was deflected into as an own goal. So really impressive performance from Norwich and a 4-2 win. Millwall went to Derby and they won 1-0 right at the end.
Yeah, big one this for Josh Coburn. A nice redemption arc for him within this game, because he missed a penalty on 85 minutes or so, which looked like it was going to be the deciding moment in the game. Zetterstrom saving from his feet. Another one of these Beckham against Argentina penalties, where it's kind of like rifled low and hard into the keeper's feet. You can make the save. But then Coburn was on hand to divert the ball home and late in injury time to make it 1-0. A disastrous result really for Derby, who continue to play against relatively poor sides. Obviously, Millwall have turned it around about under Alex Neil, but last time at home it was Oxford and they drew that game 0-0 without creating a great deal. Here it was Millwall, and they're sent home packing 1-0 when it looked like it was going to be 0-0 without creating a great deal, with a penalty save to thank for that in the first place. So, yeah, John Eustace has got his work cut out. This fits into the conversation. We've spoken about Luton, talking about Derby. These teams have to, they're almost playing at their worst. Not the case with Argyle necessarily, but in Luton and Derby, you could argue they're probably playing their worst ebb now, at a moment where they have to be improving in order to stay up. So again, it seems very hard for me to understand from here how they're going to find that necessary improvement in order to fight their way out of this.
Portsmouth are proving. Portsmouth will probably stay
and cruising.
Up. 3 wins in a row. They beat QPR at Fratton Park. Not much in the game really, except for Josh Murphy. Josh Murphy ×2 really, and then Jimmy Dunn provided the 3 moments of quality in the game and the 3 goals. Murphy cutting inside and firing a beautiful shot into the top corner to put Portsmouth ahead. And then pretty soon after that, going down the outside onto his left foot, firing a ball across, tapped in by Matt Ritchie. We've been saying pretty much all season that Murphy's probably the best player in the relegation battle because he's got such varied threat, be it coming inside onto his right foot and scoring from range, or, as is often the case as well, going down the other side and providing great delivery with his weaker left foot. An excellent player, a brilliant couple of weeks for Pompey. They're 9 points clear of the relegation zone now. And a word for Jimmy Dunn's goal, which was just a really shocking level of deftness for someone who's basically a bit of a bulldozer. And who
expected deft.
Yeah, it was quite remarkable. Hugh El Arbitro said in the WhatsApp group, "It doesn't feel OTT to suggest that this weekend's results have effectively made Portsmouth and Swansea safe. Oxford having 2 shots on target against 4 games is why they aren't." So unlucky, mate, but not quite yet, says El Arbitro. Plymouth and Cardiff. 22nd and 21st, Plymouth and Cardiff, they drew 1-1. It's probably not ideal for either side, but Argyle will have to take it because Cardiff were much the better side in the first half. They were ahead through Salek, and they were, until Gutas's red card, looking good for a 1-0 win or more. But Gutas pulling back Mumba, who was through on goal, and against 10, Argyle did manage to equalise. A long pass forward into Bundu, knocked down for Tijani. Good to see those two contributing and combining. The 1-1 draw, as I say, potentially not ideal for either, particularly Cardiff, having felt like they were surely the better side at 0-0.